sprint races. One of the more controversial aspects of current Formula 1, with the most vocal part of the fan bases saying that they don't like them at all. But how can Formula 1 fix this? Now, the first answer from a lot of fans will be, get rid of them. But it looks like that's just not going to happen. So let's try and find a way to make them more interesting. The entire point of the sprint race weekend is to have more action over the weekend and get more people in the stands and get more people watching on TV on a Friday and a Saturday. Which, to be honest, I think the sprint races have already done. But the issues arise when the Saturday isn't very interesting. We saw that in a big way in Austin, which was an incredibly boring race and also told us everything we needed to know about the Sunday race in terms of race pace and tyre wear, so the race on Sunday became incredibly predictable. Now, if you were to ask David Croft what he thought the solution to the sprint races was, he would tell you that a sprint race championship is the way to go. And the reason I know this is because every sprint race, it's all he says every 5 minutes. But I really don't see how that helps at all. Not only does it not improve the racing on the Saturday, it also does not make the Sunday race any less predictable. The most important thing of this whole pitch of the sprint championship is who the hell cares about a sprint championship? Because I don't think the drivers would, I don't think the teams would, I don't think the fans would. Then there's a whole load more of questions. Like, for example, if next year, 2024, Max Verstappen wins the World Championship, but he also wins the Sprint World Championship, does that now make him a 5-time World Champion? And if not, once again, what's the point of a Sprint Race World Championship? Also, what kind of bonuses will Formula 1 be giving out to the teams and the drivers for their position in the Sprint World Championship? And then the biggest thing of all is we already get points for the sprint race that go into the main championship. Why does it make it any more interesting if they go into a new exclusive championship? In my mind, that makes it much worse, because you're watching a race where the points go exclusively to a championship that no one cares about. So I don't think the Sprint World Championship is the way forward. Another solution I've heard is for the sprint races, we put the reserve drivers in the car. Now, this might help in terms of entertainment and making the races more interesting and making the Sunday race less predictable, but I think the issue with this idea arises in terms of your mainstream audience. The overall point is to bring more people into the track and have more people watching the TV on the Friday and Saturday. Now, the people who would care about reserve drivers, let's be honest, are already watching every practice session anyway. That audience that they want as the extras on the Friday and Saturday is your mainstream audience. They want to see Lewis Hamilton, they want to see Max Verstappen, they want to see Fernando Alonso, they want to see Charles Leclerc, they want to see Lando Norris. They don't want to see Mick Schumacher, Liam Lawson, Felipe Drugovich, Robert Schwartzman, Pato O'Ward. And that's no offence to those drivers, because they are all great drivers, but that mainstream audience doesn't know them yet. Over time they may become more aware of them, but I don't think they would watch a racing series full of drivers they don't know. And the entire point of the sprint race weekends is to get those people watching more. So I don't think that would work either. For me, there's only one clear answer as to how to improve the sprint race weekends. And strangely, it's a solution that has already happened 13 times in the last year at Formula 1 race weekends. Because it's the exact same thing that Formula 2 and Formula 3 do. On a Friday, they have one 45-minute practice session, followed by a 30-minute qualifying session. There isn't Q1, Q2, Q3, there is just one 30-minute qualifying session with everyone involved. Then, on the Saturday, they have the sprint race, where the top half of qualifying is flipped. So for Formula 2, P1 to P10 are flipped, and for Formula 3, P1 to P12 are flipped. So the person who takes pole for the race on Sunday starts 12th, the person who starts 12th on Sunday starts on pole on Saturday. This means that you don't get people purposely going slow and qualifying last in order to start first on Saturday, because it'd be very difficult to try and fake your way to 12th or 10th in qualifying. It also means, for example, if the top 10 gets flipped, that 11th position is now devastating because you are so close. And much like in Formula 1, there are less points given to the sprint than the feature race, meaning that that pole position that you earn is still far more important because that's when the big points are handed out. But what this means is we have a far more unpredictable race across both races. Because on Sunday we're going to see the fastest drivers at the front, but on Saturday it means the fastest drivers have to fight through all these other cars whilst they're defending as hard as they can. Now I know F2 and F3 is more of a stock series than Formula 1 is. It's not fully a stock series, but it kind of is, which means that it's very different to Formula 1. But just as an example, so Formula 2 in its modern era came into existence in 2017. Formula 3 in its modern era came into existence in 2019. Since then, there have only been 2 Formula 2 drivers who have won a feature race and a sprint race at the same weekend. Felipe Drugovich in Spain in 2022 and Ollie Bearman in Baku in 2023. And in Formula 3, it's still yet to happen. Whereas in Formula 1, since the sprint races were introduced in 2021, 7 times out of the 12 sprint race weekends, we have had the same person win the sprint and the feature race. Over 3 times of the amount of repeat winners in Formula 2 and Formula 3. And Formula 2 and Formula 3 combined have had 112 more sprint race weekends than Formula 1 has. So I've tried to give you an idea of what our top 10 would look like if we went for this method. And now obviously it's very hard to do so, but I've taken the Q1 sessions from each of the sprint race weekends this year. Now obviously it's not going to be exactly the same because the top drivers aren't going all out at that point, but it's the only time that you see every driver competing on the track at the same time in a qualifying atmosphere. So this is what our top 10s would look like for a sprint reverse grid this year. From this, we would have sprint poles for the likes of AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo, Haas and Williams, who are all teams that have never seen the front row this year so far. And Max Verstappen, who dominated the year, starts no higher than 8th across 6 sprint races. So this was the actual grids for the sprint races this year. I think they would make much more interesting races because the slower cars have to try their hardest to defend as the much faster cars fight their way through the grid. The only reason for why this isn't happening right now is the faster F1 teams don't want it to happen because what if they lose a race? Oh no! But, I just think there's moments when the FIA and F1 should just force them to do things for the betterment of the sport. They force the F2 teams to do it, they force the F3 teams to do it, it makes it more entertaining. Just tell the F1 teams to shut up and get on with it. So I think that would solve the issue of the boring races, but we still have the issue of tyre wear and race pace just being shown. And to solve this, I think we need to introduce the sprint tyre. A tyre which is exclusively used only in sprint races, which has the dexterity to just get to the end of the race. The teams can only use it in sprint, and then you have the added question of strategy. Because if you manage the sprint tyre, yeah, you can make it to the end of the race without stopping. But you could also push it really hard, have a stop, then push a second sprint tyre really hard again, bringing in a strategy element to the sprint race. So not only have you got faster cars further back, you've got someone like Max Verstappen thinking, right, I have to go from 10th to 1st here, how about I just go really fast, push it really hard, go all the way through, pit, push all the way through again and win, whilst you've got the likes of a Yuki Tsunoda starting on pole position, going, right, I'm going to manage these tyres, go through to the end, do no stops and see how I go. And that added element mixed with everything else would make some really interesting races, and also you're not giving too much details away about the actual tyres degradation for the actual race the next day. So I think that would improve sprint races. And, I watch them anyway, but I'm not the target audience they're trying to attract for these sprint races because, like I said at the start, the diehard fans are watching everything anyway. But that, for me, would make these really super interesting races where anything could happen. and every sprint race you'd be excited to see, because you're like, oh my god, we could see Kevin Magnussen on pole position here. What if Haas won a race? And then all of a sudden, sprint races start to mean a little bit more. It's like when Piastri won the sprint race in Qatar, it was like Piastri's won a race, but no one really felt as if Piastri had won a race, because you go, oh, it's only a sprint race. If the sprint races start to feel more exciting, all of a sudden they start to mean more. And that's what we need, because the way we're going at the minute, yes, we're attracting this mainstream fan base at the minute, but if the races continue to be as boring as they have been, all of a sudden they're going to go, oh no, I watched the last 2 sprint races and they were dull, so I'm not going to tune in again. And then they're gone, and you're not getting them back again. So I think this would be the way to improve it. Let me know in the comments what you think of this idea, and what do you think we could do to improve sprint races, and don't just say get rid of them, because they're not going anywhere. That's all we've got time for this week. I'll see you next time. Until then though, have a good one. Goodbye.